Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Kevin Moore Show. Now, if you want to stay up to date with all my latest videos, just click that subscribe button below, as it really helps to support the show. If you're new to the show, I interview guests from a spiritual perspective, covering mainstream and alternative subjects and much more. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Ronald Kinsella. He is an artist and author who has written and illustrated numerous books, including science fiction for the mainstream media and books on ufology. And he joins me today to talk about his 1982 abduction case and much more. Ronald Kinsella, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on your show, Kevin.
It's great to have you on. Now, we're going to talk about your abduction story. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I guess you don't actually like that word, do you? I'll keep saying that throughout this interview. If it's not abduction, how would you? What words would you use? Just very briefly, what would you say?
Snatching.
Searching. Is that what you said?
Snatching.
Snatching. Okay, interesting choice of words. Snatching. Okay, well, some people might say, okay, well, what's the difference? But I'm with you. I'm going to flow with you on this one. So, we're talking about an event that happened in 1982. Okay, and obviously, I'll mention this probably later on, but I had your brother on previously for a previous interview, and I'm very grateful to have you on to talk about your abduction case, snatching case as well, right? So, and we'll maybe get into your brother in just a bit, but obviously you're twins, so that's why I'm sort of just mentioning your brother there as well. So, going back to 1982, take us to that day or whenever this event happened, and just what you were doing that then led to the series of events that you're going to discuss now.
Yes, I mean, it was a winter of 1982, but prior to that, in the summer, Philip and I had witnessed a sphere over our grandmother's head. We were present with her. That was very strange. This was the very start of it in the summer. And it looked like an orb. It was the size of a football. It was dull grey. It looked heavy. It wasn't a balloon. It came from the rear of the garden and then sped towards us and then hovered over her head. Now, I made a mistake on one show by stating the height of it. I got it wrong. It would be the second level of the house. That's how high it was, because it then paralleled and went to the window afterwards, after just remaining static. It wasn't a balloon because it was breezy, so it stopped completely dead in its tracks, and it was just watching us. And Grandma tried to alleviate any fears by saying, "Oh, look, the fairies down the garden have come to take a closer look." Those were exact words. But I knew it wasn't fairies at all. I looked at it. It looked like technology. It looked like some piece of hardware. I mean, we wouldn't have used that word then. It wasn't around. I would call it an electronic eye. It was watching us. I'm damn sure it was watching us. There was no cord. There were no seams. But you know what's interesting about that, Kevin, is the fact that I've looked back researching this, and the Foo Fighters, not the band, but the UFOs that followed the aircrafts during the war, they told them, could it be one of those? The reason why it's not glowing is it's stationary. I don't know. It's an interesting parallel, really. But it remained there for perhaps a couple of minutes, stationary, and then it just zipped across to the house, climbed up, and then shot off. We watched it shoot off into the distance at a remarkable speed, just shot off. So this is how it began in 1982. And as I said, then you couldn't talk about it. I mean, it was hushed up. So the fairies, it was the fairies from Grandma's perspective, although she was just being very, very kind because she didn't want to frighten us. But it struck me as she might have seen these things before. I don't know. But this led to the actual encounter with them, as I called them. And this was the winter of 1982. And I was in my pajamas. Philip and I shared a room. They were big Victorian houses, very large Victorian houses up by the football grounds, would you believe? We lived up by the football grounds, Luton, Hazelbury Crescent. A nice place, actually. I loved it. I always called it a concrete jungle, Luton. Referred to it as a concrete jungle. I loved growing up there. But it was, now I don't know, as for the dates and times, I never kept a journal. It'd be very odd, I suppose, if a 13-year-old keeping a diary and writing all in the diary. I was lazy anyway as a kid, and people will say, "Oh, that's just an excuse." I'm not bothered what they think. You're a kid, and we have to forget it. It didn't happen. Remember, these things don't happen. So I was taken from my bed and whipped up through the loft. It was winter. It was dark. I can't exactly remember which month it was, what time it was, what day it was. I don't know. For all I can say. Yes, I was just taken. Philip was sound asleep. I was taken up, just went through the loft, and there was something dark hanging above the house. I could see it. I couldn't discern the shape of it. I couldn't see what it was, but there was something there, definitely something hanging there. And I went in, and I arrived in this squat kind of room. Now, I'm colorblind, as I said. I don't know the particular colors, although I think it was whitish or blue. I can't remember, and I'm not going to make it fit. I was in this wheelchair. I appeared in this wheelchair. Now, this wasn't like our normal hospital wheelchairs. This was very modern. I'd never seen anything like it. Very, very modern. I found myself seated in it. I still had my pajamas on, and I was in this room, and it kind of had a medical environment to it. A kind of medical. I was paralyzed to a degree. I could turn myself like that, but I couldn't move back. Now, the strange thing is, I knew immediately that there was someone behind me. There's someone behind me. I don't know why. I just knew there was somebody there. But ahead of me, I could see three of these things standing before me. Behind them was what looked like an operating table. Now, to my left, I can't for the life of me remember what was there. I tried to turn, but I can't remember why. I cannot remember this section here, but I remember to the right, I beg your pardon, to the right, but to the left, it was sort of curved. It's a squat room. I beg your pardon. It's to the right, where I was sitting here in this wheelchair. I can't remember what was there. I don't know what happened there. I cannot remember, but this side I can. Beside the wheelchair, there's like a utensil rack, or a very modern looking utensil rack, sitting there. So it gave it an overall medical feel. Now, standing ahead of me were these three people, but they weren't people. I knew they weren't. I just immediately knew they weren't normal. They're very tall, and they were armored in as much as they were covered completely from head to foot. Their hands were gloved, and their eyes, they looked like, the top part looked like gas masks. The eyes, the lenses. Well, when I looked at them, I heard him speak behind me. I said I could feel someone on you. I don't know why. I just knew there was someone behind me. I could perhaps feel him, his presence. You know, when you're sitting down, you can feel someone behind you, or we have that, But he spoke. And what he said was quite shocking. He said, we're going to perform an operation on you, Ronald. Now, that is key. That completely shocked me because of the name, my name. He knew who I was, but I didn't know who he was. I couldn't see him. I just couldn't see him. Something prevented me from seeing him. His words were clear-cut. They were absolutely clear-cut. And he said, we're going to perform an operation on you, Ronald. And I guess I started to weep. I mean, you're just a young teenager, kid, really. This is horror of this operating table behind these armored men. And they just stood there, impassive. They just stood looking. And I remembered begging and pleading him, I don't want this operation. Now, for some strange reason, I believed it was to do with the head. It just entered my head. It was to do with surgery on here, in there. I don't know why. It's just, I'm being honest with you. I just thought, it's in there. That's what they're going to do. And I begged him. I remembered pleading with him. I don't want this operation. Please let me go. I don't want the operation. He said no. But he made it quite clear. He said it quite clear. I promise you. He said, this has to be done. We have to do this. But I will promise you we will not harm you. Well, I trusted him enough to believe that they wouldn't harm me. I just trusted him. His voice was authoritative, not commanding, but authoritative in a way that is like a senior. And I did trust him. And then he took from this utensil rack, he produced, now this is interesting because I've never had an operation in my life, never, but I did a year ago. It was to do with my prostate. I have a general operation on it. But he took this utensil from the rack, and I wished I had counted his fingers. I never counted his hand, the fingers on his hand. I wished I had counted the digits. You're not taking notice of it. I'm interested in what he's picking up. I'm horrified. I don't know what color they were. I think they were white. I'm not sure if they're blue or white. I'm not going to make it fit, but they were light. He took this utensil, and it was like a thin rod with another thin rod, and it had a nodule on the end. And with his nodule, he took it and he pressed it there, right there. Pressed it on my hand, and I went out like a light. Now, just before we carry on with this, I had an operation, never had one in my life. I didn't know anything about medical knowledge or know-how. They put the needles in there. That's where they put them, in there, exactly where he placed the nodule. It didn't have any wires, it didn't have any needles. He just placed it flat on there. Bang, I was out like a light. I was out. The next thing is I was ejected from this thing. I was falling. Now, this I remember very well, because as I was falling, I could feel my skin. Now, I didn't feel this going up, but I felt it coming down. Every hair on my body was static. It was standing on end. It was like a wave, a wave, a wave, as I was being dropped from this down back into the house. Now, I went through the loft again, where I come up, but I didn't feel the static going up. It's strange, but I felt it certainly coming down. Dropped through this ceiling. I was slowing down by this time, and then I hit the mattress. I'll never forget that, because I could feel contact. That made it even worse, because I realized that this is actually happening. This is happening. I'm here, and I remembered this feeling of dread enveloped me. I was looking up now. They gently placed me gently back on the bed, and this static wash went. And that's when they showed me the vision, the conjuring, the holographic thing up on the ceiling.
You were back in the bed, and all of a sudden you're looking up and there's a hologram above you?
Yes, that's right. It appeared. I saw it materialize. The hologram appeared, it materialized, and it was gigantic. It took up most of the ceiling. And what it was this I did know was blue. It was like an electric blue. And when it appeared, it wavered like water to give it a sort of look as if it was moving, the illusion of movement, but it wasn't. What it was the gigantic head of their version, I would imagine their version of what we now know as the Cheshire Cat. It was the awfulest thing I had ever seen. It was looking down at me, it was grinning, its teeth were visible, and it was just staring at me. This was the ultimate horror. In fact, when I think back at the encounter with the doctors, or the incident with them, they were quite tame compared to this horror that they presented me. Now, although in the 80s 3D was crude, we had 3D glasses to see Jaws and all that. I think Jaws 3 when it came out, they were very crude. We need receptors, lenses. They could hold this light in thin air. This was technology, now thinking about it, or past thinking about it, that defied everything we have then, we had, even now. It was superb. This image of the Cheshire Cat was wavering. It wasn't really moving. I figured out that the washing movement was giving the illusion of motion, but it was looking at me, and I remembered absolutely being completely horrified. And then, I don't know how long it wasn't long, he dissipated, he vanished. And I remembered the room. I was cold, frightened, and they had gone. Now, what's interesting about this incident, very interesting, and I'm not going to make it fit, I don't know. Something very strange happened to me at school. It wasn't the day after. I don't know how long it was after. It wasn't that long, I don't think. But they said that they were going to perform an operation. I assumed it was to do with the head. I don't know why. I just knew. I was categorically, absolutely adamant it was to do with the head. I was at school and I'm physically fit. There's nothing wrong with me. It never has been then, not since, apart from the prostate in the 50s. You know, in the 50s, they have to go in there and have a look, as is standard with us men. I had a massive fit. And how this started was in geography. And I had massive pains running down the back of my head. Right. It was so bad, I clutched my head. The pain was excruciating. And I collapsed. And I was fitting on the floor for 2 minutes. They pulled me out. They were very good, the school I was with. I was at Stockwood High School. I loved that school. They were wonderful. They pulled me out and sent me home. Now, but they did ask if I'd like to see a doctor. I was horrified. One, because of them, and two, because of it's to do with the head. I mean, that's you. They go in there and start poking about. That's you. I said, no. I said, I'll be fine. But I wasn't really, because I had this banging headache. I'd heard of tumors and things then at school, but I was worried. But you know, it went, and I did. It wasn't then that I put the two together. It was years later that I wondered if there was a connection, whether they had done something. This is going to sound odd coming from me because of what I said about the extraterrestrials perhaps being not so nice. Well, not all of them. I'm not tainting them all with the same brush. But is it possible that there was this force that could see death or foresee it? It's something to consider. It's only one element to consider. Certain deaths. They were aware of it or something, and they did something to correct that with, and there would be an aftermath like earthquakes. You have the seismic tremors afterwards. Could it be that? I don't know. But then I wondered about them, whether it was their doing, whether they'd done something to me. I don't know. And people say, have you gone to hospital to have a scan? No, it's not as easy as that, to go in and just have a scan of your head. You can't just walk in and ask them to scan. And even if I did, let's say I think there's something in there, is it a chip, as we now know what they do with people, somewhere where they put it where it's inaccessible or very hard? You're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And it's not lie after lie to enforce this. It's the absolute truth. I was terrified of doctors, and I thought, no, we're not going down that road. So I've often wondered whether it was something they'd done, the tampering or something. I don't know what they did to me. I can't really be honest with you. I don't even know if it was to do with the head, but they put me out. And this raises a very valid question as I started looking into this alien paradox, or if they are alien. It's the fact that if they can knock you out prior to an operation, why is it they can't knock you out prior to a snatching? You know, if they're so technologically advanced, they can just knock you out completely, put you to sleep, as we've read. I've done research on this. I found other cases where reputable people have their relatives right by them, and they're knocked out. They can't wake them. It's like they're completely dead to the world, but they keep them awake. So I assume that it's because they want you to see them. Now, the reason for that is very strange, because I have no answers to that whatsoever. Why on earth would they want you to see them? But evidently they did. Because, you know, if they were going to take me, why couldn't they just keep me knocked out? It's very, very bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, it's very bizarre from that perspective. And, you know, even Travis Walton was on the Joe Rogan show just maybe a month ago. And he's changed his tune on the whole abduction experience, where he said they were there to try to save his life.
Yes. Now, that's interesting. I did not know that. I know of Travis's encounter, the horrendous, not the movie. They elaborated a bit on that, but certainly his encounter with them. That's very interesting, because I, first of all, thought they were hostile. I hated them. I loathed them for what they had done. I kept putting books against the door and old guitar propped against it. And ironically, they took me through the ceiling, but it screwed me up. I was fearful of things. You couldn't tell anyone, as I said. But then thinking about it, I actually wondered if they were, I know this sounds ridiculous, but we're going to go down this road, whether they were angels in suits. Were they some time-traveling force that had seen something that was going to happen? You see, this is where I'm open-minded. My book, I'm not wear blinkers, But I look more at the darker aspects of it. We know about the cattle mutilations and Skinwalker Ranch and Benton. We know of them. And that's a negative force, I would imagine. But there are good things as well. I do agree that there are good things. I did consider whether it was possible they had saved my life.
What does your brother think of the experience? Because obviously you two can compare notes in the sense that because I know he feels that it's possible that it could have been a positive experience that he went through in the end.
We have conflicting issues there with that. I'm still under the impression, I still do really feel that, if they're so magically advanced to save all this, why would they want to be seen? If they had camouflaged themselves, why would they bother if they could just knock you out? It doesn't make any sense to me, And what was behind those suits, those masks? I've often wondered what was behind that. Now, this is another interesting question about the whole alien, the whole alien paradox. It's the fact that they seem to change faces as swiftly as they change ships. And this is why I look into this in the Digital Demon. I look into this, basically how they're able to change themselves. Is it possible that they can manipulate us mentally? So, as I think you suggested it yourself, Kevin, so that our perception of them is different or preferable to how they wish us to see them. Fear, beauty, anger, hatred. I don't know. It's interesting because it's not dividing them into one thesis of them coming from outer space. We all thought to begin with, even I did, that they came from flying saucers from other planets. It was absolutely drummed into us they come from other planets. That may not be the case now. I think with the help of many researchers and many good, well-educated people, I'm only a casual researcher, but there are many brilliant people out there. We're now seeing a little bit of a different picture here, that they may not come from outer space as suggested. They may come from either the future. I have my doubts about that, but it's possible. Or I'm more inclined to believe it's interdimensional.
Well, absolutely. What if this was just one version of reality and there's other parallel, what do you want to call them? Right. Parallel universes. I mean, to even look up at the sky and see the infiniteness of the ever unending darkness of the whatever we call this the universe. That continues on without any borders, and then to think there's other versions of this out there. Is that the mind of God we're looking at, or I don't know, right? But if there was something. What about when we cross over? We talk about that we've gone to heaven or home. What if it's another parallel reality that's not what we understand, even whatever our understanding can be? Do you know what I mean? It's beyond that.
Yes,
do you know what I mean? It's beyond.
Yes.
Yeah. God. Yeah, but in your present moment, though, what has it done to your present moment? I suppose you're here now talking about it. You may say to yourself, well, yeah, but come on, this is years later that I'm now talking about it. But you are, so it had some effect to get to this point.
Yes, I want to know what they are. I want to know where they come from, what this is. And this is going to be I don't think I will. I think I'll probably end up not ever knowing. I think the people before me probably were trying to work that out, and they still are now. I think a lot of them. I want to know what they were. And people suggest, why don't you have regression? This was the answer to all things. It's not. Regression is not the answer to all of it. I believe it. I trust in it. I trust in regression completely, but it depends who does it. It's like a tool, isn't it? And your frame of mind.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yes, you're giving yourself the answers, no one else is. But yes, that's right. Someone's still guiding you, and it's how they took you down and everything else. That's right. But it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. But I think what my point was a few minutes ago is that. Well, look, what you have done something about it. You're talking with me, and you're going to be talking with many others soon. So It is out there now, and it will be out there more. So was that the point of it? Was that partly the point to talk about it?
I think that is quite right. Yes, it perhaps is.
Partly, I see. Yeah, I mean, but there could be something else going on here as well, where actually, not only did they show themselves that you do talk about it in the future, but they did And is it an illusion that actually they were helpful to you? And even in a conversation like this, we're tricking ourselves to say they were, so that if they did come to more people, oh, they're safe, they're okay. Do you know what I mean? They performed something
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors. But then, do I live in a reality of a fearful universe with fearful beings out there that are out of my control, or do I live in a loving universe? What do I want to manifest?
Yes, that's a good point. It's down to our own psychology, isn't it? It's our outlook. Yes, I mean, when I was 13 with the doctors, with the doctors, I had a positive outlook. If we look at that from your point of view, I was still growing up. I didn't really know exactly what I liked or didn't like then, totally, but I think I had a positive outlook on life then. So,
What has this experience done to you in the sense of your own questioning into this particular field as well? I mean, did it sort of get you into, obviously I know you've done a number of science fiction books, but is this what propelled you, do you think?
I don't know. I did become artistic afterwards, but I'm not attributing any spiritual aspect to these visitors, or what they were, as I call them, the doctors. But it's made me fear them. I mean, when they had done this, and I had read no material on UFOs then, this was 1982, I wasn't even remotely interested in UFOs or flying saucers. I loved science fiction. Any kid would. Doctor Who was around. And then you fall into that manhole of people saying, well, they're imaginative. He imagined it. He likes science fiction. This is the nasty thing about it. When you've been down the rabbit hole, they're going to point fingers at you and say, no, it didn't happen. But the doctors were very smart in as much as showing me this image afterwards, which they thought was a seal of approval on their behalf that would condemn me to absolute silence forever, which it didn't. Curiosity didn't kill the cat. And I think as I got older, I hopefully made me a bit wiser, more cautious to it. And I've looked back at it again and again. And I will categorically swear on the Bible, although people may not be religious, but that's fair enough. I appreciate that. But that this was not sleep paralysis. It was not an illusion. I was not on drugs. I didn't smoke anything. I was as fit as a fiddle. This happened. This encounter absolutely occurred. I had met them. They weren't nasty, but they were forceful. And they proceeded to do a procedure they said they were going to do, and it had to be done. It wasn't unpleasant because they knocked me out prior to that. Now, this is one of the questions I ask about the whole incident, is if they can knock you out prior to the operation, why on earth can't they knock you out prior to meeting them? It would save everything and more. It will keep them invisible. So I believe that they wanted me to see them. And the reasons are still vague at best, I think, Kevin.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to get into your story. Don't think we're not.
Yeah.
But there is obviously a journey after this happened as well. And
Yeah.
Did you tell anybody of your experience after it happened straight away?
I told only my brother. As I said, you couldn't tell anyone. It was horrifying. I mean, although they weren't unkind to me, and I'll make it clear now, they were not the Greys, or I couldn't see behind what they were. But it's interesting how things change, isn't it? How the physical appearances of them seem to alter or become, as I've mentioned in my book, what's in vogue. No, I couldn't. The only person I told was Philip. And it was only, and of course I was ashamed and embarrassed, because then they might take you to a shrink and you're mentally unstable. You have to be very careful. And as I said, I'm a child of 13. But you see what they, as we will get to that, as you said, about what they presented to me afterwards in the form of a clever hologram. I saw through it, you see. I saw through it was a hologram at the end to try and dismiss the whole thing. But even that added insult to injury. So that shows that they know us very well and they're very smart, as we will understand later on when I recall or relay to you the encounter itself.
Yes, and when you mentioned Philip Mantle there, that's the ufologist Philip Mantle, who you've been working with closely for a while. You've
Yes.
done a book, illustrated a book for him. Well, just tell us a bit about your connection with Philip Mantle. Why don't you tell it? Yeah.
Yeah, I've known Philip Mantle for some years now, and the how I got to know him was quite incredible because I wasn't rude to him in an email. I just mentioned something about his books. I didn't know who he was. I'm being ignorant to really ufology. Philip was more into it than I was. Um, then I've opened up now about it, but I questioned him about his books or something, not derogative, but it was tongue in cheek. And Philip said to me, "You do realize, don't you, who that was?" And I said, "No, it's called Philip Mantle." He said he's one of the leading ufologists. I thought, oh God, but he is absolutely lovely, and he is my mentor. And it's a gradual thing, you see. I think trust and integrity is a gradual thing. So it took a while, but we developed a kind of friendship. And he's absolutely wonderful. And because I know he knows I'm an artist, I mean, I love art. As I said, after seeing these things, I became more artistic. I don't know whether it's attributed to them or not. I don't know. But it boded well with his projects because he then asked me to do some illustrations for his authors and also one of his books that he was working on, a brilliant book called Introducing UFOs. And so I said, yes, I'd be delighted to. And that's how it formed. It takes time to form trust and a bond, but as with everything, but that's how we got to know him. And he's an absolutely wonderful gentleman. The one thing I like about Philip is his integrity. He doesn't have nonsense. So I do love him. And of course, I'm learning from him as well in that department. About the in engaging integrity and also accepting faults through theories. If you're wrong, you're wrong. You admit it. I admit that. If I'm wrong about certain things, I will admit it. It's not a slap on the hand, but it's like, okay, fine. We can't go down that road. Philip he's had this idea for this book for juveniles and about publishing a book on some of the more unknown cases, but also some of the famous cases like Betty and Barney and the Kenneth Arnold sighting, of course, the famous Kenneth Arnold sighting. And I thought this is going to be wonderful. I've illustrating flying saucers and spaceships and aliens. I thought was just incredible how, because I was as I said, I'm an artist, how it found a path. Whereas before it wasn't really taking any direction apart from my science fiction books. But it took on a whole new direction. I thought this is rather useful. The trouble with the art is that it does take time. Some people who they ask for a picture, I imagine I can understand from their point of view, and I appreciate this. They think you can just whip it up in an hour. I mean, these images take about a week for me to do, sometimes two, and they're very detailed. I use digital technology now. I'm colorblind, you see. So the digital, I'm colorblind. My grandfather was colorblind, and I suppose we inherited it, but I'm colorblind, not totally, but partially. And it means that the browns and greens can be mistaken, the shade if they're lighter or darker. And so this digital technology is a blessing because it offers a wheel, a color wheel. So I recall where the basic colors are, the neutral colors, and then I work from that. So I once painted a green horse, for someone, thinking it was brown. I think it's the only green horse in the world, I think.
Yeah, no, it's different. Absolutely. Hey, look, that's incredible that you're, because I've seen some of this artistry in the book that you're talking about. The book's just coming up on the screen right now, and you've done a really good job on the artistry there. It's not easy sometimes to get, because some of this is well, I mean, it's from the mind, and it's also from the artistic side of trying to put something together where there's no sort of reference except for witness statements and other such things. So yeah,
yes, it's challenging. The art is, I mean, it's also taught me a valuable lesson with art because when you have an idea in your head, it never comes out the way you envision it. It never does. So it's trial and error with this, and it always is with me. I mean, recently I did a mechanical dog, one of my characters, and this might make you laugh. He turned out, although he's metallic, he turned out green. It was only when someone commented on him that is a green dog. I thought, oh God, it's happened again. The dreaded green. So I just said that. I just said that perhaps it's a reflection of the light from the sun hitting the grass, bouncing off him. It wasn't a derogative comment made. Of course, it wasn't. But it did humour me. I thought, oh, I've done it again. We don't have a green horse now. We have a blasted green dog.
Hey, look! If you can't laugh at yourself, what can we laugh at sometimes? Do you know what I mean? We can't take ourselves too seriously, and I guess you had to get past a certain part of self-ridicule just to be able to publish your book. I mean, that wasn't an easy thing to do. And also, when you did make the choice to publish it, how has the response been by people that you thought would be quite critical of you putting that sort of information out there?
It's a very good question, Kevin. Very good. And I will be honest. I brace myself. It's only just been the Digital Demon has just been published. And because it's a personal account, my reputation, and that's the worst thing, you see. The people that smile at you, are they wearing crocodile grins? Or are they being sincere? We can't tell. I've never heard anything negative said to me at face value. But that's easy, you see, because anyone behind a screen, or keyboard warrior, as they call them, very easy, swiftly do it. I mean, it's like when a book is judged on Amazon. There are three things it's judged by: hatred, honesty, or downright, what's the word? I've just lost it. I do apologize. Competitiveness. If you have a competitor who wishes to see you fall, they will do everything they can to bring you down. It's not paranoia, it's absolute truth. I mean, loads of books have 1s, 2s, and 3s, and I actually wonder when I read some of these books, looking at the reviews, they didn't deserve a 1. It's like the old Roman times, isn't it, when they do that?
Yep, absolutely. It's so easy now. There's videos on YouTube about people that have published books on purpose to show how easy it is, where there's nothing in the pages, and they've just done the right sort of stuff to get it to the top of the charts. And so, it is a bit like that, right? So,
it is.
Yeah.
It is unnerving. That's a good point you made. I'm still unsure. You see, it's just come out, and sometimes when I wake up, and this has happened for years and years, when I wake up and recount the encounter with the doctors, as I've labelled them, I used to feel a degree of ridicule in myself, but it's burnt away in time, because I think age is a blessing in one part, that you become more comfortable with it. And it's this with them, this encounter, that encouraged me to tell the world, if I can, and to relay what happened, and especially the holographic image they presented to me at the end, the mirage, which they presented, if anyone else had seen something similar. So it opened up, as I said, a can of worms, but bracing myself certainly for reaction, and that is a terrible thing. I mean, this is the thing. Philip and I were discussing this just earlier, Kevin. That's a very good point you made. Is that it's all well and good writing the book, and immediately you have people saying it's for the cash. It's not for the cash. Ufologists make very little money, and if they're lucky, they make some. It's not about the money. It is the passion of getting your words across to the world, of expression.
Well, they say don't die with your music still inside you. And if this really happened to you, right, and you're of course you're being honest, and you've had the balls to do it, and you've put it out there, well, who knows what the bigger picture is for any of that, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Just doing it is the biggest thing.
Yes. It's like the aftermath of this, the doctors, what they did to me was disgraceful, because it caused paranoia. I used to stick books against the door. Although they took me up through the ceiling, I propped even an old guitar against the door, so that if it opened, it would make a racket. It scarred me. They scarred me, because after that, I was frightened to death of seeing anything like them again.
I'm going to ask a really difficult question now, right? And it's nothing impersonal. It's just, other people's perspective of it, maybe, right? So we've got two twin brothers here, right? Both with abduction stories. Now, some people may say, well, what are these abduction stories are hiding memories of sexual abuse?
None whatsoever. I can answer that absolutely honestly, with hand on heart. No, none of that. And even if they say that you screen that to actually come across as becoming, accepting it as that, this is absolutely nothing of that at all. Nothing, any trauma of that kind. No.
Fine. Yeah, I had someone on many years ago, right, who talked about, that some of this is screen memory for that. Did I buy it much? Well, I let him on. I mean, well, is that answering the question? Did I buy it? No, it's not. Maybe some cases, but not the majority. Absolutely not. Do you know what I mean?
No, it has to be considered, though. I agree. I agree with you. With fear can do pretty much a lot to the mind, but absolutely is a valid point, and I absolutely agree with you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess now you've put your feet in the water. I guess now that where now do you feel? What would you like to do now you've got this out?
Do you know, Kevin? It's amazing. I don't know. I mean, I'll carry on with the art, and of course, with the science fiction when ideas come. But even they are lacking. They can be very lacking ideas. I mean, people say you're imaginative, but it takes you a while to gain anything. And as I said, this is a mistake people do make. They say, well, you're imaginative, you imagine them. This is the nasty thing about it. This is the sting in the tail. I didn't imagine them. And the science fiction came afterwards. It wasn't before them. The writing and the art and everything. It came afterwards. Perhaps they had a little influence in the art, I don't know, with these spacemen, or they call them, as we call them, spacemen. I'm not referring to them as aliens at all. I have never done that in my book. I don't know what they were, but they weren't normal.
Had you not had the experience, would it have made any difference to the way that your life has gone, to the where you are now, or would you not be able to answer that because you just don't know the answer to that? But do you feel consciously that it's made any difference?
I think it would have made a difference. Yes, I do. I think personally it would have done. I wouldn't have got into all this. I think I would have carried on with science fiction or worked on science fiction if that's what I'm supposed to do, and art. But no, I don't think it would have done that. Even you see people say, they watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that wonderful film Steven Spielberg made, which I did feel, even when I had seen that on video. I never went to the cinemas. It was much later I saw it on video. I thought the ending was, no disrespect, and he's a genius. Steven Spielberg is an absolute genius, but I felt the ending was too patriotic and too nice. I didn't believe the ending at all. They were good, how he'd done them. But that you see, that's funny, isn't it? Because I think people portray them as being in the 50s and 60s, they were evil. And then they become, then they're benevolent, then they turn evil again. But no, I think it would have changed me. I wouldn't have been interested in this because I hadn't seen them. It's just, I can't be 100%, Kevin. That's a good question, but I think I would have not got into it. Why would I need to?
Yeah, I asked myself that question as well. I mean, it's funny, I'm in America. I keep in contact with my family as much as I can do back home in the UK. And, we do talk sometimes about the UFO incident that we all had. And it was funny speaking to them recently, and my sister brought it up. And it's like, God, yeah, this really did happen. We all saw this thing, and we've got missing time and everything else. And it's something so strange, do you know what I mean? And what's it all mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I've had something similar. Now, when I went under regression, of course, I'm up in the craft. Then I'm doing all this, this procedures going on. Do I remember that? If I hadn't had that regression, probably not. So did I want that to be part of my reality? I don't know. But I'm just telling you that story because you're not alone.
Yeah.
There's many people that have had that stuff. But what is the bigger picture of all this? Maybe we're not meant to know, but do you think, because for your brother, obviously, he's gone, there's a mediumistic side that's developed as well, and, he's doing all sorts of things. Do you feel that side's opened up for you, or do you think it's there at all? Or...
I I'm not a medium. I mean, I walked. This will make you laugh. I sat in circle after all this. I got involved with all of it, most of it. I sat in circle for 4 years and couldn't bring anything through. I tried and I tried, but I had seen a medium about 20 years ago, a very good one. Even then, I denounced it. It's ridiculous. I'd seen the doctors in 1982, and even after that, this was brought on through a death. So I went to see a medium, and I even poo-pooed it until I went to see her myself, and it was a slap in the face for me. She was absolutely incredible. So I'm
Who was that?
open-minded.
Sorry, who was that? That was incredible.
The medium was, her name was Pearl, and she doesn't do it anymore, but she was a local medium, and she had done work for the FBI apparently. Cold cases, yeah, we found out, but they keep it. Of course, they keep it quiet because of the reputation.
Well, I think as well, it's a very heavy thing when they take that on, and I think some of them it's just too much, and they just would rather not do that work. Some of them, in the end.
It can be distressful, especially
Yes.
with murders
Well,
and paedophiles as well.
Well,
yes.
yeah, when you're taking on the energy of the victim and what they went through, I'm sure, how many more ways do you want to die and be and experience that? But yes, she did do that, and you found her to be, well, to give you some information that really made you look at things differently, I guess.
Yes, I'm a hard nut. I'm afraid to crack, because even after seeing the doctors, as I said, I'm seeking for rationality, but there is none in this department. There can't be any, because it's not measured. We're not taught it at school. It's not talked about, and if you do, you're considered a crackpot. So just keep your mouth shut and keep quiet and carry on. But I went to see this medium. It developed even more after that, because after my proof, which I needed, she came round and she did past life regression on us. I was dubious about that, but and it took a lot of consideration before she proceeded with it, but we had it. But I didn't see what I wanted to see. I saw 4 incarnations, or alleged incarnations, but they're listed in the book, The Digital Demon. We go into all that, especially the Ouija board I used, the deception of it, deceptions. I would say deceptions. I did experiments with it, you see, and it was very interesting. It's not a trick of us. It's something there, but it's like a tool, I suppose. We used it properly, of course. We used it correctly, but
I think you can open up to stuff on that. I think, well, if you look at some of the great channel material, like the Seth material, that did start on that Ouija board, right? But
Jane Roberts, yes.
Jane Roberts, yeah. But I think you've got to be careful. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, it's like being in the back of a bloody alleyway somewhere and just letting all the homeless people coming in and not screening them. Do you know what I mean? Nothing against homeless people, but I'm just saying, if one was a bit more desperate than the other, what good information are you really getting sometimes? So you've got to be careful. Yeah. Yes,
I got my fingers burnt. We did an experiment. I'll give you an example of this. This is interesting. We used it for the first time, and it was moving. The planchette was moving to some letters, and I couldn't understand what it was saying. Philip and I had our fingers on the planchette. Well, we trust each other. We don't lie. We can't lie. It's like we're twins. We don't, and we know each other only so well. We weren't lying. It was moving around, and then it started to spell something, and it came out with some of these words. I can't remember what it was, but I'd asked it to stop, and I had an idea. It just popped into my head. We had a friend with us, Susan, a very good friend of ours, and I said, Susan, would you do me a favor? I said, get pen and paper and write something. Go out of the room, write something, and put it in your pocket and come back in. Just anything. So she did. She went out of the room, and she came back in, and she got a bit of paper in her pocket, and I said to the board, I said, now, can you tell us what she's written? And it's spelt clearly trickery. And I said, no, if you're in our position, we want to know, what did she write? I was very assertive on it. And it came, you wouldn't believe this, it came up with DARTHMAUL. Now, George Lucas, the wonderful George Lucas, had just released one of his Star Wars films then, with a character called Darth Maul, or Maul. Well, her face went white. She plucked it out of her pocket and showed it to Philip and myself, Darth Maul. And then it said, well, it then said satisfied cheekily. I said, yes, I knew. But you see, what this did was, it was disconcerting for me because I realized that there was something to it. Uh, there's definitely something to it, but it was very uncooperative. And the one thing I've found through experiments is like trying to find anything about the death of assassination of the wonderful President John F. Kennedy. It would give you nothing. The Roswell crash of 1947, and also the Diablo incident, the skiers at Devil's Mountain, I believe. Nope, it just said about them, the skiers, you don't want to know. Now, I've looked into this incident. I know it's a separate thing, and I'm not happy with any of their testimony. From missile tests to avalanches, it's rubbish. They were dropped. They were dropped. They were fleeing from something. They were dropped. So that's how I felt. But the board, going back to the board, we got nothing. And I tried. God knows I tried. But so we have done a lot of experiments with it. But I agree with you, Kevin. It's like a tool. Perhaps it didn't like me. Didn't like me at all. So it didn't like who you are. I suppose it's like anything. If it don't like you, it's going to be obstinate, like a little child who's had his mobile phone taken away from him.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's been whatever you connected with. There's been been where it is for a while, and
yes,
more confused than anything, or stayed away from the light too much.
Yes.
With Roswell, what did it say about Roswell? Did it say anything?
No, it wouldn't give anything at all. It would give nothing.
Okay.
It would give absolutely nothing.
So basically, you talk about this in your book, just the journey that you took and the sort of the journey, shall we say, of how you could come to terms with what you'd been through, and what more was there to this reality, maybe, that you could prove to yourself. I don't know.
Yes, that's right. It's been an incredible journey. And the deeper I got, the more stranger things became. Pearl is one of them, the medium Pearl, because it opened up the past life paradox. And it was amazing. I saw 4. We wanted to see one she'd seen when she did a reading. It wouldn't come through. So I saw 4 alternative ones, only 4. And that was over 24 years ago. I think 24 years ago, I had them done. I've never forgotten them, because what I did was I recorded them. I drew what I saw. And it's a good job I did, because, well, I've never forgotten them, really. The little integral parts I've used for the book to clarify certain things. I mean, if it's possible, yes, I do believe incarnation is possible. People are entitled to their opinions or views. If they don't believe it, that's fair enough. I respect that. Just as if they don't believe in aliens or UFOs, that's fair enough. I don't blame them, because I was the same prior to seeing these things myself. So as you can see, I'm not the only one. There's many people who've been down the rabbit hole. I'm just one small individual, another number, another jewel to the crown.
What would be your hope for sharing your message, do you think?
That's a good one. Comfort. I would think there's no point working on or hoping for disclosure, because that's not going to come. Disclosure will never come. It won't come from the powers that be. Certainly not. We know that. If it's going to come, it will come from them. But what are we dealing with? That's the thing. You see, are they benevolent? Are they evil? Are they part of a psychology we can't understand that can manifest reality? Are they interdimensional? We don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't know. It's like, as I said it in that book, it's rather like a jigsaw puzzle. And when you get the good pieces, you know what I mean by that, you're trying to put them together to form a coherent picture. We're not any wiser. There's 1 or 2 things we have concluded on this. Philip and I have concluded personally. It's not universally, but it's personally. Is that 1, they may well be interdimensional. And 2, they don't have a best interest at heart.
Difficult, that one, isn't it? Maybe not for you, but for me it is. Yeah, that's the only one I would struggle with. Yeah.
I'll give you an example, Kevin. I'll give you an example. When I researched or looked into the UFO field, I looked back at the 50s and 60s, the cases of these Nordic aliens, golden-haired, beautiful, wonderful creatures that arrived to offer blessings and wisdom to the earth. So they picked people and expressed their concern for the atomic age, or now the nuclear. Now, something didn't quite fit with that with me. I'm not denouncing them, or I'm not saying they did not have the experiences. All I'm saying that they may have been deceived, a grand lie, because they took these people away, quite a lot of them, preaching about, and we have read about it, we know about it, about their concerns for world affairs, for nuclear or atomic then destruction. Well, my argument was quite simply this, is that if they're so advanced and so technologically minded, so clever, they could just whisk around and neutralize them at night or whenever, neutralize the weapons. Job done. We build more, they do it again. We get our hands slapped. We can't build them, it's pointless. They've won. They haven't done it. Perhaps that in itself is a great illusion, because it just didn't match. It didn't, for me, it didn't tally. Now, I hope I'm not standing on any toes here. We are entitled to our opinions, everyone else is. This is my personal opinion. It is not universal, as I said, it's my own personal opinion. It just didn't wash with me. You know, this concern for world peace. There was something wrong, you know, and the point is that these people come off these wonderful stories of going to the moon and Mars or wherever, Venus, and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, there's something not quite right there. You know, if they're so concerned for global unity and they're worried about destruction, they would go to people far greater than the individuals that are mentioned or are mentioned.
Well, look, how much disinformation in this field do we know about? There is a lot, because there's a lot of people with their own mental health issues. And because this isn't like a, you know, you need to be qualified, or there's sort of, you know, various levels of checks and balances that happen sometimes, you know, where people can grab a microphone and they can say what they want. And yes, does that really take away from some of the genuine stories? Possibly. I guess that's what you're going to get with human nature sometimes. Or what if they're picking up on some other reality where some other aspect of themselves in some parallel reality is having that experience, but it's not their version of reality that's happening to them. They're just picking up on something else that's, you know, connected to them in some other some way that we can't understand. I don't know. I mean, is that making excuses for mental health? Probably. I don't know, right? Or maybe it's none of that.
It's this one thing I have learned, with all due respect, is that what I have learned with this subject is, my goodness, it's never ending. And of course, as you just said yourself, we have to consider the mental aspect. I mean, people will say I'm crazy because I saw the doctors, but I know I saw them. They didn't give me words of wisdom or offer any concerns for world peace. That was far from it. They were determined to do something, and I think they did it. What exactly they did, I don't know. I can't tell you, but because they were strange. But there was no world peace or this concern for atomic or nuclear warfare.
No, and actually, maybe some of these people's experiences are true, but I still think there's many people out there in this field whose egos just get the better of them, and their discernment is so out the window, and it's all about silliness and, you know, just stupidness rather than, you know, actual, you know, trying to weed out the genuine stories from the false ones.
Yes.
I mean, that happens in any field, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's just we happen to be in this one. So
tunnel vision. Yes, yeah, tunnel vision. I've covered.
Yep. Tell me, what did that guy say? That famous ufologist, Stanton Freeman used to say, you know, don't show me the facts, my mind's already made up. So, you know, and there's some truth in that. But some of the most famous stories, some of the bigger ones that have made popular culture nowadays, like even the Bob Lazar story, you know, through Joe Rogan and the latest documentary film documentary that came out on them. I guess, and we trust the people who are putting that information out. And if they've really not done their due diligence, and we don't know about that as the public watching it, it's easy to mislead people, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. I mean, with the doctors, I have never coloured anything. And I made a rule of that. I have never, ever coloured. That's the worst thing you can possibly do, or anyone elaborate or or coloured it. I went to, and as if they could make a film of it, they couldn't because it's too short. You know,
And going back to the cat, that cat. Well, you're calling it a cat, but that face, it never. There was no anything verbal that came out. It was just an image.
it's. I did wonder whether this is what was the curiosity didn't kill the cat is one of my chapters. I did wonder. I wanted to know why that cat, and it took me 30 years to work out a possible solution to it. It's that is it possible that after this thing they had done or whatever they did, is it possible that they presented him so that if I remembered it, how they can think you can't remember it. But I think they did this as insurance. Is that when I go to see a shrink and say I saw the grinning cat, or say, all right, you've been down the rabbit hole, you've seen Alice in Wonderland, this is the Cheshire Cat, the grinning cat.
Yes, and here's your medication, sir. Yes,
Yes, that's right.
yeah.
This is what took me a long time to work out, to decipher why.
Or was it part of the hallucination of something that some of the coming down of some sort of medication that you had taken or that had been administered to you? Or what's funny about the cat is that when you look at the Sphinx, before it was what they say about that now is that originally that it was a cat. That was a cat.
Yes, I do believe that. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And it's almost like, I know you hear it sounds crazy what I'm saying, but what if there was a cat race? I'm not saying there was, right, or is, and I'm laughing saying it, right? I shouldn't, but I mean, we what was that about the Sphinx? Why was there a cat? Did they deify the cat in the sense? Is the cat like sat on the treasure, like it's sat on, it's captured something? Do you know what I mean? Like the Sphinx being, maybe there's some sort of relics of Atlantis information in there. Who knows, with hidden chambers, right? I don't know that you can tie that stuff back to Atlantis, but I don't know. I mean, why? Yeah. It's yeah, and it's not like you can just phone a friend or call them back up again. Do you know what I mean? And ask them to explain themselves. Very difficult.
Yes, the Sphinx. Yes, I do believe, as you said there, I do believe actually was a lion, because all the pharaohs did was carve away to depict their own faces, because it would present the lion. It would enforce the fact that that's why the head's smaller than the body, because it was originally a lion. They believe that they built it through the constellation of Leo at the time, but that would give them enormous understanding of the stars, and that's another can of worms, because their knowledge of the astronomy was incredible.
Well, that's right. Where did that come from, right? But this is the civilization that was here that may have been more civilized and more technologically advanced back in the day than we are now. A bit like the film Highlander, where the future is coming from the past, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But Highlander 2.
It's distinct possibility. Absolutely. I'm open to all. I'm not gullible saying that, but I'm not blinkered. That's quite possible. Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
there's your next sci-fi book. The future is the past is the future. And I don't know. I'm just saying. Yeah. I just. It's very, yeah. I mean, even as a host, I'm like, where do you go from there? Do you know what I mean? It's such a difficult one, but I think just to share it, and that's all you can do. And I think you won't be the only one. How about that?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, with Philip, it's funny, isn't it? After these, Philip becomes, as you know, a clairvoyant. I couldn't read the skin of a rice pudding. As I said, I sat in circle for 4 years. This was probably 10 or 12 years ago. I could get absolutely nothing. God, I tried and I tried. I sat there and I could get nothing. In the end, I mean, you have to give it to me. 4 years of sitting there training. But the medium I saw, this is interesting, Kevin, and the medium I saw said I was, but I sat in circle. I couldn't get anything through. But something very strange happened. And I do seem to have it, but it's sporadic. I have no control, and it's just brief. I will give you an example. I was interviewing someone from New York a few years ago. It's William, a lovely chap, William. He's into all this stuff. And this is interesting because I don't think we're gifted. I think everyone has this. It's just if you open up to it, or if it's sporadic, or something that kickstarts it. But this is after Circle had failed. I was just sitting there talking to him. I couldn't see his face. I couldn't see William at all. We were just talking, and this is he can testify this absolutely. I was talking to him, and all of a sudden I kept seeing this sand. Now I kept seeing all this sand everywhere, absolutely piles of it. It looked like the desert to me. And I said to him, I nearly passed it up, Kevin. I almost passed it up. But I just said to him, it must have been so strong for me to actually say, William, I'm sorry. Now, he wouldn't think I was nuts because we're talking about the paranormal anyway. I said, William, I'm seeing all this sand. This was a Sunday. We were interviewing him. All this sand, can you take that? No. He said, no, I couldn't. Well, I had forgotten about it. So I came back on Monday, and there were about 3 emails from him with photographs. He said, you're never going to believe this. Today I worked with sand. Piles and piles and piles. I've never worked with sand before. There's piles of sand everywhere. Now, some will cut that down to coincidence. I don't believe that, because it wouldn't leave me, this blasted sand. So I had either time traveled or had a premonition of the future.
Yeah.
But I didn't ask for it. It just happened.
Well,
I didn't know the meaning.
No, and there you go. And there's an example where you that's right, you connected with some part of you there. But I mean, maybe, well, the way I see it is that if we're a soul having a human experience, then, you know, we are all able, if we're infinite I am energy, or whatever you want to call it, right? We've just always been, but we just can't remember we've always been, because maybe we're just having this, you know, focused experience right now. But I mean, if that was the case, then sure, we're all able to tune in. I suppose it's whether we've come in with maybe that in our life plan to do that stuff and to be a bit more open than others. Who knows?
Yes,
yeah.
I'm a great believer of the I never used to, but I've seen enough evidence. I've seen enough evidence, as I have with the UFOs. I've seen them as well, even afterwards. Not the occultists. I only saw them once. I've seen the UFOs enough to convince me they're not military. This is not an elaboration or a hoax. They are real. The UFO enigma is absolutely physical. It's real, or it can manifest into reality. It is a real thing. And also the concept of survival after death. It's funny, you know, when I was younger, as I said to you, I poo-pooed the whole thing. I wasn't interested. But it's funny how these things have happened that have opened doors. And, you know, you don't need to knock on them. They just open these doors. It leads you down this road. And it's got some forks in it, but you're going on in this journey. And it's absolutely wonderful. In fact, this journey has got me now. I don't like change. I'm honest with you, Kevin. I don't like change, but I'm very worried about change. I always am frightened of it. I always have been. I'm honest. I'm terrified of change. I don't like it. But going places like abroad, but Philip and I have been invited to, because of this book, The Digital Demon. I hope you don't mind me mentioning it. We've had the honor of being invited to the Laughlin UFO conference in Nevada this year in June the 6th. So Bob Brown has got Philip and me to travel there to talk about our encounters. So in reference to you saying about spreading the word, it's going to be quite different going there and talking in front of many people, but actually presenting the work.
Congratulations on that. And it's funny you saying that. I was just thinking, you know, one day when I'm in a different place and a more metropolitan place, I'm thinking about, you know, eventually heading out to Vegas and having my podcast in person there. I'd love to get you and your brother on one day as an in-person interview, and one day get that arranged, because that would be very interesting to have. And it's a different sort of energy to this sort of remote stuff. Absolutely different energy.
Yeah.
So what would you say, as we're getting right at the end of the interview here, is the most important message of your work so far?
Yes, that's a very good question. I have been damaging in the past in the sense of poo-pooing things. I have been wrong. I have been proved wrong. It's a slap in the face for me. Certain things have happened. It's to be open-minded, to not be so judgmental on things. I was You see, that was my mistake. I was judgmental, saying, this is rubbish, that's rubbish. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. Even when Philip came back to see the medium, I will tell you this now, when he came back, and I was laughing and joking until I realized there was something to it. Even after the doctors, I can't understand it. But I could smell youth dew all over him. Now, this is interesting. This is one slap after another in my face is what I required, because I wasn't really open-minded. But I could smell youth dew all over him. He was smothered in. The medium wasn't wearing any perfume. I met her afterwards. But my grandmother always wore it, and she was dead.
Oh, she was coming through.
It was her,
amazing.
Yeah, it was. I could smell it. It wasn't imaginary. I could smell it all over him. He wafted it. This is one of the points I'm making. It somehow manifest into reality, or knock in our senses, or knock on them senses. It's amazing, actually. To be open-minded, Kevin. To be open-minded.
Yeah, absolutely. And your website one more time, or did you have a website?
I don't at the moment. I'm only on Facebook, so it's under my name, Ronald Kinsella. I don't have any platforms other than that at the moment. I used to have a website, but it's just paying for nothing.
That's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to put your Facebook page on the screen throughout this interview, and okay, of course, that is in the description below as well. So I just want to say, Ronald, just thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Kevin, and I'm very honoured to be on your show. Thank you very much.